What's happening in Tallahassee, Florida? Not too much, at least not too much that's good. I can't believe it's this bad. Boston College goes in there and wins 28-14 last night. They were 17.5-point dogs, and it was never in doubt. It was gross to watch. I gave this 2 Chalai on our brand new game rating system that gets 2 out of 5 Chalai, and I'll give them credit now. They made it watchable. I don't know what kind of number ESPN did on this. It's got to be higher than what they thought it would be. I remember everyone was looking at the schedule saying, Saturday's going to be awesome. Sunday night, USC, LSU. Monday night, what's the Labor Day game, guys? Oh, it's Boston College, Florida State. All right, well, Florida State will get right. No, they got it handed to them. They didn't get right anything. Do me a favor. I don't often ask you guys to do me personal favors, but I got a friend. His name, we'll call him Danny. And I just like for those of you out there, any kind of prayer group, or if you've got your own prayer list, just add my friend Danny to your prayer list. He is a defeated man right now. And I don't want to give you any more information than that. It's just because of Florida State's failings early in the year, my friend Danny is struggling and he's down bad and he could use your help. So, Mike Norvell's got a problem on his hands. Mike Norvell cares a whole lot. Mike Norvell is all in. He puts his heart and soul into Florida State. The problem is his players don't care as much as he does. At least not enough of them do. And that is one of the consequences of leaning on the portal. Now, I'm going to talk about what happened, and I'm going to talk about how this roster was put together and then where it's going, because I wholeheartedly disagree with a lot of the talking points out there that have been popularized on Mike Norvell. But before I do my part in maybe taking Norvell's side a little bit, I've got some bad news. This was a Sarah McLachlan special in Doak Campbell Stadium. Boston College just annihilated, let me emphasize, annihilated Florida State up front. 263-21 rushing edge. Florida State had to use trick plays as a 17-point favorite at home to stay in this game because the 17-point dog was sledgehammering them in the throat all night. 39-09 to 20-51 time of possession edge. Florida State, 4 of 17, third and fourth down. Boston College in the first half had one drive that equaled more than all of Florida State's first half drives combined. Boston College had 10 runs of 10-plus yards. Florida State had 1. FBS favorites this year, double-digit FBS favorites, are 71-1. Florida State in that role is 0-2 so far. And if that wasn't bad enough, Bill O'Brien hits the finisher. And the ultimate finisher in college football, the ultimate sign that I have just panched you in front of the world and you couldn't do anything about it is, I'm going to get inside your 10-yard line at home and I'm going to take a knee, essentially screaming to the world, we could make it a lot worse, but they've already bled enough. We'll dust ourselves off and we'll head back up to Massachusetts. Just a splattering. I know it was only a 2-touchdown edge here, a 2-touchdown gap. This was a splattering. You know it and I know it if you watched. So, thank you, Sarah McLachlan, a rare second appearance in a given week. A lot of you had a lot to say last night. I have a lot to say. I don't ever feel bad for guys because this is football. I mean, you got to have a winner and a loser. But Colin, do you have that tweet that someone put up earlier today? Yeah, so I responded to this. Someone said, Norvell's on the hot seat. You can't say he's not. I can say he's not. Mike Norvell's nowhere close to a hot seat. Mike Norvell's seat is fine. His team just sucks. His team's not good. His team was put together in ways that are a little bit different and atypical and non-traditional. But it's his team. That's what you got to go to war with. And they have leaned on the portal before down there, and they've won big. They did last year. They have leaned on the portal again for this team, and it's not a good team. Got some really talented players, but it's not a good team. I'm going to go back to what folks were saying in the preseason. NFL types, people who cover that team and watch practice all the time, they were fooled into thinking this was going to be a pretty good to a really good team. And the reason is because their eyes didn't deceive them. What they were seeing was a whole lot of talent at practice. Well, those guys didn't leave. They're still there. It's just they're individuals. They're not a team. They're individuals. Like they're not a unit. And that's how a bunch of kids you don't even remember the recruitments of at Boston College came in and just embarrassed them because that's how football works, which is the beauty and horror of this game. But I'm going to tell you something. Our buddy Parker over at Stats Award made a good point last night, so naturally I'm going to steal it from him. But he's right. Nick Saban and Kirby Smart have ruined the sport for a lot of people, at least the way they perceive it, because Nick Saban got his program to an elite cruising altitude and stayed there. Never dipped, never dropped below a certain level. He was always number 1 or number 1A. Kirby Smart has Georgia there, and there's no dip. There's no dip. That doesn't mean they'll make the national title game every year, but it means as a program, they're operating at peak efficiency. They're favored in just about every game, and if you beat them, it's a huge deal. That's not normal, never has been, and it will not be moving forward, even more so, because of what the portal and NIL in conjunction with the portal does to the depth of those elite rosters. See, Kirby doesn't have a problem losing his starters. Nick Saban didn't have a problem losing his starters, but what those guys were starting to deal with and will continue to deal with is what happens to the fact that someone out there is willing to pay $125,000 for your backup linebacker, which you're not willing to do just out of principle alone. Well, that guts your depth a little bit. And so disproportionately, it's going to be even harder than it already was to maintain that level of performance. And it was already really hard to maintain that level of performance immunity. So Mike Norvell is discovering what many coaches before him have discovered, and the public in turn is discovering about Mike Norvell. What many have discovered is just they're viewing it through a different lens. In 1996, if someone were to have popped an undefeated season on you, and then they regressed or they fell back to the pack the next year, you would have said, well, I mean, give him a little break. The guy was in contention for the national title the year before. But now people think if you're elite, that just means your program's right there every year. Well, maybe Mike Norvell's not elite, firstly. Maybe he's just really good. So that's one possibility. The second possibility is if he's really good, this is in the deck of cards. I'll tell you how it could be in the deck of cards. Maybe Mike Norvell hasn't fully figured out his program philosophy and his recruiting schematic yet, his talent acquisition schematic. This was bound to happen to a handful of guys. You don't inject something like the portal as it's currently constituted into college football and everyone just figures it out. Some guys are going to figure it out. Some guys are going to get totally burned by it. And some guys are ultimately going to figure it out, but there's going to be a learning curve. Mike Norvell's in the third camp. Norvell will get this stuff figured out. Mike Norvell and his staff have done an average at best job of recruiting, and they've done a pretty good job to a really good job of going in the portal and getting a bunch of players, but the portal is sorting itself out. The portal is proving to be really feast or famine. And you're going to have some anecdotal examples. Florida State last year, chief among them, of efforts in the portal that ended up being feast, and then you go and you do what Florida State did last year. But famine is going to be out there, which just goes to show you, even if you portal guys in at a high level, there is not a consistent performing top 5 caliber program long-term that's going to lean on the transfer portal. They just won't. You're going to have coaches, and I think Norvell was right to do this, that use it to jumpstart a rebuild. Totally fine with that. But you've eventually got to shift it. That's what I expected from them, and they haven't really done it. I expected them to jumpstart it via the portal, and then pretty quickly you shift 20, 40, 60, 80%, and you're just a traditional high school recruiter, which you should be at Florida State because you're in the state of Florida. So you should be crushing it. Especially you should be parlaying an undefeated season last year to an excellent recruiting class this upcoming cycle. I don't know that they're going to land that. I don't know that they're not. But no legit head coach, I will continue to stand by this, no legit head coach, and I think Norvell is one, is going to lean on the portal long term and have sustained success. There'll just be blips on the radar screen. There'll be wild up and down inconsistency, and there's no excuse for Florida State to be that. Florida State should be a player perennially. But you only get, you only get so many tries at this. You're Mike Norvell or you're whoever. You don't get to try it one way and then try it another way and try it another way, because each way you try it is 2 or 3 years. It's not like a video game where you can try it, hit reset, try it again, hit reset, try it again, and you did that in the span of a day. That's not the way that you get to do it. So here's what I think is happening down there right now. I think Mike Norvell knows his coaching staff's probably not good enough, and there are upgrades that need to be made there, and I would agree with that. In general, I'd agree with that. But I also think he's probably looking around saying, I thought I had something on this team. I thought the DNA of this team was one thing, and it's not, and it's a problem that I wasn't aware of that. But it makes sense because these guys are not Florida State. These guys are somewhat Florida State, and then they're mercenaries who just kind of landed at Florida State, but they didn't buy Florida State. Like that's the same thing that you're looking at with Texas right now. I have talked to some folks at Texas, and they portal guys in. Texas has been really good in the portal, but ultimately, they don't want to talk about the portal at Texas. They don't want to talk about the portal at Bama. They don't want to talk about the portal at Georgia. They use it. They'd be dumb not to. But it's a supplement tool. They sell Texas. They sell Alabama. They sell Georgia. Ohio State sells Ohio State because the nucleus of your roster has to be made up of kids that out of high school, in some cases with bigger offers in the NIL market, chose you because you're a fit for them. They bought you. They bought the program, the vision you sold them. Not enough of Florida State is made up of that kind of player right now. Mike Norvell's not an idiot. Mike Norvell, I think, realizes that. The difference is I could go on a message board right now and I could just say that. Mike Norvell could realize the same thing, but the difference is it takes months and months and a couple of years to actually put that in practice. And even if you realize it, you've got to go land the kids. You got to have to compete against Miami and to compete against the other big programs in the South that you're going to recruit heads up against for athletes. It takes more than just being committed to recruiting against them because there are a lot of programs that are committed that get their head beat in recruiting. You got to be more than committed. You got to be really good at it. That's what we got to figure out. So hats off to Bill O'Brien and the crew because they came down there and they took advantage of their standalone spot. This is one of the more embarrassing 2-week stretches for any major program that I can remember in quite a while as it pertains to on the field. But I think less of Norvell only because I wish that there had been a more aggressive pivot after last year. That wouldn't have changed this year's team. So maybe it's dumb to say it that way. But I hope, here's what I'll say, I hope that the struggles he's having now will trigger a more aggressive shift, which I think it will, into traditional high school recruiting. I remember when the portal first caught on fire and NIL and the portal just kind of meshed and caught on fire and everyone was having conversations. Do you even recruit high school as much anymore? They don't have those conversations anymore, you notice? That was pretty short-lived. Mike Norvell's going to be fine at Florida State. There's not an ounce of hot seat talk. They're going to be bad this year. They're going to have a really bad record this year because there's no real heart and soul on that team. They, I don't know. I wish, I don't wish anything because if I wished it, I could just say it. I was pretty blunt in some text that I sent to certain people last night. They know whomst they are. I'm not going to repeat that on air because it is self-defeating, but they don't have it, man. Where you open the chest up, where that heart's supposed to be, this Florida State team doesn't have that. So they'll be run through again. That's not the last time you're going to see that happen. And, I mean, Mike Norvell's looking in that team's eyes, and it's just it's lights on, nobody home. And he said all the right things. I was listening to him last night talk, but he's got no answer. They've got no answer for this team this year. And it is September 3rd. Can you imagine? Can you imagine saying that? This was the favorite to win this conference. You imagine that saying that? Some seasons haven't even started on September 3rd, depending on the way the calendar shakes out. And we're sitting here, they're 0-2. They got Memphis coming to town. And Jesse, what did you tell me that number is at FanDuel right now? This is in Tallahassee. Didn't you tell me Florida State's a 1.5-point favorite? Is that right? At home, Florida State 1.5-point favorite. Then they got Cal coming in. They've still got to play Clemson. They've got to go to Miami. They go to Notre Dame. The FSU Florida game, I cannot even imagine. It is otherworldly to try and comprehend where those respective programs could be by that point. But I am told that football game will happen. It will happen in 3 months, but it will happen.